The Apple Vision Pro has officially been available to the public in the United States for a month, and as someone who has used it for the past month, there are a few things to go over now that most of the dust has settled on a new product category. Let's jump right into it. For starters, the first generation Apple Vision Pro is more of a product for software developers to experiment with developing apps and games for AR/VR environments, along with those like me who want to get their hands on the newest tech. A few examples of why is the price starting at $3,500 and the overall limited abilities of what you can do with the headset currently. Apple still hasn't figured out what the main selling feature will be yet, as they're probably waiting to see how the general public implements it in everyday use, along with what developers create and what proves to be useful and popular. From what I notice when it comes to productivity, it certainly makes a difference as it eliminates having to jump between tabs or apps to move files around, but is not quite at the level of a Mac as it can't run more sophisticated software like Audible Photoshop or Final Cut Pro, let alone not having any ports to connect accessories. My final opinion on productivity is it works well for basic workflows where everything you need can be accessed online or wirelessly. Oh, and a quick side note when it comes to personal personas for FaceTime calls, I'm not totally sold on it yet, as it's still in a weird phase where it's like too real but fake at the same time. In the entertainment side, I find it works excellent for consuming movies and TV shows, especially on apps like Disney Plus and Apple TV that have designed a unique VR viewing experience. An example being while in Disney Plus, I can be in a sand speeder on Tatooine and throw on an episode or two of Star Wars: The Bad Batch.
A company.
Hello.
What's that?
Adolescent human female. Origins uncertain.
For platforms like YouTube or Netflix that don't have an app forcing you to watch through a web browser, the experience isn't too bad as you still have control over the content size when viewing in full screen, but the controls can be a bit touchy and sensitive if you want to rewind or fast forward. In the gaming side, there are a few AR games on Apple Arcade like Synth Riders and Fruit Ninja. Games that are available on iOS and iPadOS like Minecraft, Clash of Clans, Subway Surfers, and many more are not available for download. In fact, a good example that things aren't perfect yet is when I tried to log on to Fruit Ninja only to be hit by a serious bug that wouldn't let me proceed with the game. As a result, this is why I'm thinking there is still much more to be done in media consumption on the Apple Vision Pro, in the terms of what's available and fixing software bugs on what we currently have. With the basic usage and user interface out of the way, let's jump into the headset a bit deeper regarding technical factors like its weight and hardware. The headset weight comes in at 624 grams or 1.38 pounds, making it one of the heaviest AR and VR headsets on the market. For comparison, the MetaQuest 3 weighs 515 grams or 1.14 pounds. Personally, I haven't really had any issues with it. I think it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's heavy at first, but you get used to it. Its battery life is quite short, only being about 2 hours for most things and 2.5 hours for video consumption. I did try watching a 2-hour movie in 3D on Disney Plus, and I only got about 3/4 of the way through before I had to swap the battery out to keep going. The cameras that are used to capture 3D videos or photos and used for pass-through only take photos in 6 megapixels and video that's not quite at 4K. The cameras can have a fuzzy look depending on the lighting conditions in your space, but are good enough to where you can read text or notifications on your iPhone or Apple Watch in most cases. The inner display lens certainly lives up to their quality when viewing high-resolution movies or TV shows, giving a sharp image. But I can't say the same for the exterior displays, as when eyes, or in this case the Apple logo, is displayed, you can see the individual pixels. For such a device to function, there are two main chips that drive it, the M2 chip and the R1 chip. A first of its kind specifically for the Apple Vision Pro to blend the footage real-time from all 12 cameras. The specs are not adjustable except for the storage capacity when purchasing. The overall specs all units have are an 8-core CPU, 10-core GPU, 16-core neural engine, and 16 gigabytes of RAM. Overall, in my experience, it seems to be powerful enough to run everything you could use currently. Now for the biggest question, is it worth it? If we take everything we went over and adjust it to a pros and cons chart, pros being what works well currently, and cons being what needs improvement still. Starting with pros, I would put productivity as it eliminates a few extra steps with a basic workflow. The overall specs with the M2 chip as it runs smoothly, and the internal displays being over 4K per eye. The cons will start with the overall entertainment and gaming aspect, as there isn't a whole lot available and things aren't functioning correctly or as expected. The overall weight of the headset can be too much for some people, and the battery life being very short, as it can make it inconvenient to watch a movie in one sitting. The camera quality is a bit of a draw to me, as it's good but can use some improvement. It's clear enough to see surroundings and read text, but spatial photos and videos are a bit fuzzy. One last thing we can factor in is the price. A lot of people don't have $3,500 to spend on such a thing, putting it out of reach, making the price a con. I would say it's best to hold off on it to wait for things to get fixed and for the price to come down. If you have any questions about something I may have missed or didn't mention specifically, you can go ahead and leave it in the comments below and I'll do my best to respond to them as soon as possible. I'll be signing off here and I'll catch you guys next time.